Life in a castle was not luxurious. It was freezing during winter months, it was dusty, it was full of spiders and centipedes. Oh, and just wait until you see the bathrooms. I'm Taylor McWaters, and here's what life in medieval castles really were like. Number 10, washrooms. Imagine stepping inside a castle, expecting the grandeur of medieval majesty, only to be greeted by a combination of communal bench toilets and the worst smell one could possibly imagine. Welcome to medieval times. Privacy was a foreign concept, so you better get comfortable with your mates. And when it came to waste disposal strategies in medieval times, well, it was quite simple. Chuck it down the cesspool and hope for the best. Throw it away and don't turn back. Now, the location of said cesspool, that really matters when you're building a castle. Take the Erfurt disaster, for example. In 1184 in Erfurt, Germany, at least 60 people, many which of high nobility, are thought to have drowned by falling into a deep cesspool. How horrible is that? They were immersed in politics. They were negotiating a peace treaty when all of a sudden, the floor collapsed. I couldn't imagine a worse way to go out, really. That one stinks. Number 9. Bathing. Bathing was a medieval quest in itself, with fresh water and bathtubs being a rare commodity. It also didn't help that diseases at the time were frolicking freely amongst the lower class, turning the castle into a nest of disease. For the nobility, wooden tubs draped in linens were filled with steaming water, scented with herbs and flowers. This was the best they could do at the time, a bath with flowers in it. It's the worst bath bomb ever, my gosh. Servants would fetch water that's been heated over open fires, a testament to the labor behind every drop of warmth, and for many, bathing remained a distant dream inside of these stone fortresses. Most of the time you're going to bed pretty stinky. Number 8, crowded. Castles were always pretty crowded, believe it or not. For those who prefer a fortress of solitude, the bustling life of a medieval castle might not have been for you. Castles require a considerable workforce to manage daily tasks. They were populated not only by numerous servants, but also by extensive families of the lords and ladies. This could span generations and get pretty crowded. Because let's be honest, if you knew somebody with a castle, you would beg them to move in. Let me clean the floors, I don't care, just take me in, give me a corner. This inevitably led to crowded living conditions, and the presence of both servants and a vast array of family members made the concept of privacy, well, virtually non-existent in a medieval castle. Number 7, dungeons. Below the bustling depths of medieval castles lay the dungeons. It's exactly what it sounds like. Realms of dread where you never saw the light of day. These medieval chambers were full of despair and darkness. Dungeons were these dark prisons that were damp, airless, and essentially forgotten by the world above. The air was thick with the scent of decay and waste. Now let's say it's the Dark Ages and you were taken as a prisoner of war. Well, if you were nobility, you got personal quarters with a fireplace and you were eating meat and drinking wine. It wasn't the worst at all. If you're lucky, they might give you a wooden bucket full of water to wash yourself up while you wait, and even a chamber pot. If you were a commoner, on the other hand, this was a little different. At most, the church guaranteed your survival, but you still stayed in a dungeon until hostilities were over and prisoners were exchanged, so a lot less meat in that one. You'll get bread and water, but you may also be put to work, so it's gonna suck either way you spin it. Number 6, punishments. What are some of the worst ways to be punished in a medieval castle, you ask? Well, let's do it. I feel like just being locked in the dark is scary enough, but I couldn't imagine the rat punishment. Oh boy, the rat punishment is not for the faint-hearted. If you've seen Game of Thrones, you'll know exactly where I'm going here. Rat punishment involves placing a single rat inside a steel bucket. Now, this bucket would be held against the prisoner, usually over their abdomen, which already I bet is very uncomfortable and rather terrifying. But once the bucket begins to heat up, well, that's when the real trouble begins. Desperate to escape the heating container, the rat will begin to burrow through the only soft surface that it can find in order to survive, which in this case was your tummy. Yeah, not great. The surface was the prisoner's flesh. Yeah, you thought Stuart Little was cute? Think again. If he was born in the Dark Ages, he would have had a horrible job. Little high, little ho. Number 5, fires everywhere. In the early chapters of the medieval ages, castle kitchens were made entirely of wood. Awesome. This, of course, led to an obvious problem. Open flames next to a wall made out of timber. Obviously it lit up a blaze. Obviously things didn't go so well. Thing is, in a world where electricity doesn't exist, not having fire around wasn't an option. You needed it to see, you needed it back then to stay warm, but eventually something would light up, and that's when disaster hit. The most notable disaster was the Great Fire of 1666. 666, that's always welcoming. Historians believe the Great Fire of 1666 started with a baker's oven, specifically the baker of King Charles II. The fire started near London Bridge on Pudding Lane, and it took no time to spread. Also, imagine living on a road called Pudding Lane. What kind of Looney Tunes name is that? Yeah, I live on the corner of Pudding Lane and Jubilee Avenue. having you. Come visit. Number 4, medieval stairwells. In medieval castles, stairwells were intentionally constructed to spiral clockwise if you were going up. Now they did this to benefit the defenders during an attack, seeing as most people were right-handed. That's me, I'm right-handed. Are you right-handed, Chris?
Left.
Left, we got a left. I'm like, don't you come up my stairs, buddy. You get poked. As attackers climbed the stairs, the central column would obstruct their right arm, making it difficult for them to swing their swords effectively. They'd be like, they'd be reaching around. It's not good. Meanwhile, defenders coming downstairs would have their right arm free, allowing them to wield their weapons with much more force and precision. Also, you're coming downstairs, so you're like, ah! It's a surprise, it's terrifying. This clever design, evident in castles in France, showcased medieval engineering specifically designed to maximize defensive strategies. Do left-handed people still exist? I mean, Chris, you're left-handed, obviously. Comment down below if you're a lefty. I want to see how many are really out there. Comment with just your left hand, actually. Let's see how good you are. Number 3, castle floors. In medieval castles, floor cleanliness was managed through surprising methods. They didn't have a Swiffer back then, so it was a little more rough. The floors were often made of stone, of course, and they were covered with rushes or straw to help insulate the rooms and to help absorb spills and conceal dirt. Medieval carpet, really, it was horrible medieval carpet back then. These straw piles could be easily replaced or topped up when it became too spoiled, if you want to say that. Servants would occasionally sweep, but the primary method of cleaning involved removing the old rushes and then laying down fresh ones. Imagine coming home to a fresh rush. How lovely. In more comfortable settings, herbs like lavender and chamomile were mixed in with the straw to combat animal waste, odor, and pests, subtly contributing to a more pleasant living environment amidst the castle's horrible conditions. Yeah, it's my lavender carpet. Come on in. Okay. Easy there, Prince. Number 2, religion. Every medieval castle had a chapel, almost all the time. While they kept prisoners locked away in the darkest of all places, they would seek answers from the Lord. That's cool. Love when humans are horribly evil and then look to the light. These sacred spaces served as the spiritual heart of the castle, reflecting the societal norm where daily life and religious practice were intertwined. They were all one. Castles, home to the nobility, upheld the obligation of maintaining a chapel, not only for spiritual salvation, but also as a symbol of their divine right to rule, of course. It's my castle because big man said so. Shoo. Daily practices within these walls included mass, prayers, and meditation. Of course, attended by the castle's inhabitants and all of their guests. So yeah, no sleeping in on Sundays. Sorry about that. And finally, number 1, rats. In medieval times, rats were a deadly threat, thriving within the densely populated and unsanitary conditions of towns and definitely castles. A lot of rats in a castle, that's for sure. These rodents were notorious for spreading diseases, most infamously the Black Death in the 14th century. It was believed to be carried by fleas living on rats, so this plague ended up decimating Europe's population, wiping out nearly 1/3 of its inhabitants. Rats also posed a significant risk to food supplies because they would gnaw through grain storage and they would contaminate practically everything in sight. If they were chewing through your stomach, they were also chewing through your supplies, okay? I'm gonna get out of here before I throw up now. I'm your host, Taylor McWaters, and we'll see you next time on Bumblebee. Okay, what's going on? Hello, Daniela. Hope you're having a great day editing. For the nobility, and even a chamber pot. A chamber pot?